Money Smart Workshops. My name's Cam McClellan. I've been asked to do this by a number of secondary schools. This presentation I normally do for Year 12 students. I also do a variation of it for elite professional athletes. So all of the NBL players, all of the A-League football, soccer players, I've seen this presentation. A number of NBA players, Australian cricketers, AFL players, a number of jockeys. So we've got a wide array of different sporting athletes that go through this presentation. So while I understand property and investing, and that's the core of what I do, really understanding the basics about money smarts is really important for everyday Australians. So we'll get into it. We've got lots to learn. We're going to talk about life balance. We're going to demystify the property industry, and we're going to teach you how to make smart money choices. Investing is like a business. So for the students out there and for the athletes, to get success and to achieve success, you must follow a process. So whether it's your studies, attending X amount of classes, taking information from your teachers, going through your different courses, sitting your exams, taking that information and applying it to the workforce. Therefore, you can achieve success. Athletes is obviously going through junior sports, identifying your goals you need to do to make it into upper level professional athletes, coaches, trainings, diet, and getting the outcome you receive. Investing and money is no different. People have these set plans to achieve success in their work and sporting environments, but when it comes to money, people don't follow a process, and hence most people fail. So by following a measured process, success is achieved, and this is what we want to teach you today. The butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is not the movie with Ashton Kutcher. The butterfly effect it was a scientific paper written in 1964 or 67, I think it was, and the title of it was, or the subtitle was, "The flap of a butterfly's wing created a tornado in Texas." And that's the concept of the butterfly effect. So a really tiny action creates a huge outcome. Similarly, with your studies or with your training, on that individual day when you're studying a certain topic, or you're working on your leap power or your vertical leap, those things aren't going to have the mass success that you want. But all those small things add up to a huge outcome. And the same with investing. Delaying gratification, doing the small things today, smart things today with money, can have a really positive outlook down the track. Doing really dumb things today can have a really negative financial aspect down the track. So there's a good YouTube clip it's worthwhile checking out just for giggles. There's one on dominoes. So this tiny little domino, normal sized domino, knocks down a bit bigger one, until it knocks down a domino the size of a 2-story house. So the butterfly effect, I think it's really powerful. Do the small things every day, all the 1%ers. Investing and becoming financially wealthy is all about the 1%ers, yeah? All right, understand an advisor's experience. When you move into the realm of money, everyone's got an opinion. Everyone wants a slice of the pie, and everyone wants to take some of your money from you. Understanding an advisor's experience is really important. It's your right to politely question an advisor's experience. What have they achieved themselves? Are they financially secure? And how does the advisor benefit from dealing with you? This is a really important one. You can politely say, how do you make your money? From dealing with me, how do you gain financially? And this one there should be one of the first questions you ask when you're dealing with anyone. Understand the service they provide. To understand why someone is promoting a certain service or product, you first need to understand how they're making their money. Because you can soon understand the reason they're promoting a certain service or product is because they make money themselves. What you want to determine is that you benefit from that and you get value from that money, and really clearly. Yeah? So what gives me the right to talk to you about money? Normally, when I do an auditorium or Marvel Stadium presentation, this presentation, I've usually got someone who'll do an introductory for me. I haven't got that today, so I'm going to blow my own trumpet a little bit. There you go, I'll quote from some of the head of school at Knox College, Andrew Ferguson, each year when I do the talk out there, he does a really short and sharp introduction for the Year 12 kids. What he says to them is, out of all your years of schooling and the years you're going to spend in university, the next hour you're going to spend going through this presentation will be the most valuable for a large portion of the students in this room. So hopefully that holds a bit of street cred. Myself though, I'm going to go through a live example of what my background is. All right, I learned from my parents' mistakes. My parents had I grew up in Melbourne, went to the country later on, so my parents had a news agency in North Mitcham. They sold that and their family home, and we bought a motel down in Warrnambool. On the recommendation of our accountant, the books were cooked and they were financially broke. So we went and lived in a tin shed on my grandparents' farm in East Gippsland, and through that process I obviously understood that while I had a good upbringing, money had a huge impact on the future of our family's life. So hearing mum and dad argue about whether they should buy milk or bread was obviously fairly detrimental to the way I was brought up. At that point, while like I said, I didn't have a bad upbringing, I made a decision that I wanted my kids to have a more financially stable home than I had growing up. That was pretty reasonable as a young kid. So I was in probably year 7, year 8 then. I knew wealthy people had property. So I moved out of home when I was 16. Dad was a prick. Moved down to Melbourne and I wanted to invest in property. So I didn't understand the share market. Property was something that I knew I could learn. So I talked to lots of old grey-haired investors, bought them lots of lunches, talked to people who were very successful, and finally picked apart and got confident enough that I could buy my first property. So I'll give you the 5 keys to wealth building that are really important to understand. I'll give you an example. So at the time I was earning $22,000 a year then. I bought my first house and I saved for a deposit and I had some costs. To get my deposit in that first house, I had to sell my HQ Holden at the time and rode a bike for 9 months, so I delayed gratification. I sacrificed everything to get that deposit together. Earning 22 grand a year, I learnt one really important thing after the first 3 months of signing that contract. I got the house revalued 3 months later when I went to settle, and the property had gone up by about $40,000. So in 3 months, by signing a contract, I'd earned double my yearly wage. Bit of a light bulb moment went off, yeah? So I learnt one of the first keys, equity. The next key is using other people's money. So obviously I'd used some other people's money at this point in time. So I had my deposit and costs, I put OPM, and then I got my equity. I then went back to the bank and I used that growth to duplicate. So I went back to the bank and I said, can I use this equity for deposit and costs of my second property? And they gave me some OPM and I duplicated. And then the really big light bulb moment went off when I realised the power of compound growth. So compound growth is one of the most important lessons you'll learn in life. Einstein's autobiography, which I thought was the most boring book I'd ever read until I read Johnny Howard's book. Sorry, Einstein and Johnny Howard. But Einstein's theory on compound interest or compound growth is he or she who earns it, he or she who understands it earns it, and he or she that doesn't pays it. So understand compound growth. It's one of the 8 wonders of the world. So I've got myself some deposit and costs, use other people's money to get some equity. With that growth, I've used it to duplicate. I then got growth on both. So I got more equity here, and compounding, I bought 2 extra properties. And so on and so on. And 20 years later, I'm still doing the same thing, yeah? So we've learned the 5 keys to wealth building: equity, other people's money, growth, duplication, and compound growth. All right. So I was in my early 20s at this stage. I then went into business. I used the money and the equity I've made for this to set up a number of businesses. So I went into the telco industry, the IT industry, built Telstra's largest business centre in Australia, 150 odd staff. It was my apprenticeship over about a 10-year period of understanding how to build processes to get measured outcomes in the business environment. Two of my businesses have been listed in BRW Fast Starters, and 6 of my businesses have been listed in the BRW Fast 100. So that's like the Academy Award for business growth. I also do a lot of development, so development as a business. The business I'm in now, Open Corp, we do property investment advisory. I sold the telco and IT companies back in 2010-ish because I really love property. I wasn't going to solve the world's problems by selling iPhones. So property was really the passion I had. There was a huge amount of industry spruikers out there that really frustrated me. I had a couple of close friends that lost a lot of money to industry spruikers early days. So I set up a business that, because I didn't have to work, that would provide really good education and a really solid service for people who want to invest in property. We also have a mortgage broking and a property management business. So hopefully that gives you enough confidence that I've got the street cred to talk to you about the basics of money. Yeah? All right, let's rip into it.